Alright guys, time to rig our skeleton. We have a joint chain that is available for us to move. We could grab it, move it up and down, and technically we're done. We could move our joints. But the purpose of a control rig is the fact that once you have your joints bound to a particular mesh, it's going to be really hard to select your joints individually. Every time you have to go in here, look them up. Controls allow you to do this outside the mesh, so to speak. So if, let's say, well, this isn't really a good example, but if I had a really big mesh, I'm going to have to go inside the mesh every time I wanted to select the joint. So that's why you create your controllers. Now, in my situation, this is best, like the best use for this particular joint chain would be a spline IK. In other words, if I just drag a curve over here, I could use it to animate each and every single joint here because it's on the curve. Now I'm going to show you, by the way, I updated my layout because it just seems that I could save a lot more space if they're properly docked. Otherwise, they'd be just floating in here and wasting a lot of space. I just created a curve, by the way, to show you what I mean. So what you would do, you'd create a curve, and when you were going into the tool options for the IK handles, you would essentially select this curve at the end of your whole setup. So you'd select your joints, your first joint, your last joint, and then the curve, and that will create the handle. But the problem with this is that after you created this, if you completely follow what I've been doing so far, you would have a root right in the middle here. The problem is that IKs go from root to, like, from start. They have a start and a finish. They don't have a middle. And in this situation, we do have a middle. And you might be asking yourself, well, if we can't use one whole curve, the whole curve, we can't use that. Why not just use, create two IK handles, one going from this way to that direction, the other one from this way to this direction. It's entirely possible to do that, however, not with the root. In other words, a joint can only have one IK. You can't have two IKs starting at the same time. Unless, well, maybe it is possible. I just haven't figured out how to do it. So I'm going to have to do this from the neighboring joints, not from the parent. Okay, I'm going to hide this now because we don't have a use for it. And I'm going to go ahead and create a spline IK for both sides. Again, if I had my root on one of the sides of this worm, it would have been completely fine. And depending on what you have, by the way, modeled on your own, you might have an easier time just creating an IK handle, not a spline, for example. Depends on what you have, all right? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and pop off the skeleton menu here and open up the spline IK handle with the tool settings. Hopefully opened up, and there we go. Now, as you can see, I only have so much choice. So I'm going to have to use this later, by hand. So what I'm going to do is grab the beginning and the end, and I'm going to re-enable this. By the way, the number of spans here, this means how many CVs you can have. 1 means 4. So 3 is the minimum you can have, and then it's plus whatever number you have here. Obviously, you can't go above 7, but then, if you need more than 7, you're probably making something super complicated, like, I don't know, Cthulhu's beard or whatever, and you need extra CVs. In that situation, yeah, you're going to have to create your curve on your own. Otherwise, just let Maya do its own thing because it does a pretty good job in creating these curves. They're very smooth and they create good deformations. So there we go. I've got 2 IK spline handles, and I'm going to have to create some kind of controller for this bit here. And that's exactly what we're going to do now. But before we do that, we need to test out what exactly we've created, because at the end of the day, if we made a mistake, it'd be better off if we fixed it immediately rather than finding out midway once we're animating. So what I'm going to do, grab this joint here. Once you've done your own IK rigging as well, make sure to do that just to test how things are working out, if they're working correctly at all. So I'm going to lift this up, and let's just simulate how we would animate this thing. Okay, let's imagine we're going to be animating, and this is like pseudo animation. So going into vertex mode, because these things are operating on points, just like all curves are, it's simply a curve. I'm going to grab these 2 points here. I'm going to move them down, And remember, this is a spline IK. In other words, these handles here, they don't do anything, right? I mean, they're just there for visual representation, but in reality, your only control comes in the form of control vertices, right? Whatever you do to this curve here, whatever you do to it will be represented onto the joint chain. So don't even bother grabbing these IK handles. In fact, if you want, you could just select them and hide them so that they don't get in the way. You could go into the outliner and group them together and just hide that as well. Just get rid of everything that you don't necessarily need. But let's just go ahead and see what's the story here. I'm going to have to pull these together a little bit. Grab these two vertices, pull them down, see how it's going to look like. And it seems like it will be a fairly easy job to animate this thing. Grab these two, move them down. Yeah, something like this definitely is usable, doable. This is essentially our worm moving up and down, so it would be sort of, well, if I have this down here, maybe I should lift this a bit here as well. Again, you also probably would want to figure out if you want to use the control vertices or the or the EP points. In other words, the curve points that are on this curve. In order to control them. Now, I'm completely satisfied with CVs in this situation because it's a nice little bend that we get with them. Otherwise, it's a little bit more difficult to get the correct bend. And I think this will work for me. Now, once you're done with your test, I'm going to just Control Z all the way back to neutral. There we go. Now, once you're done with your test, you need to figure out how you're going to control your stuff. In my situation, since I'm going to be using both sides of these, of this joint chain, I'm going to use clusters. If you remember, a cluster was a deformer. I'm actually going to pop it off right now if I can find a deform menu. There we go. Now, a cluster is a deformer, and I'm going to show you what exactly I mean by a deformer. Well, actually, I think we already talked about this, so it doesn't really matter. What I want to say is that a cluster is best described as a point which controls many points. But since I have only one point here, I'm going to use it on both sides. So I'm going to have it in the middle, so to speak. Actually, every cluster that I use will be in the middle. I'm going to do this off screen because I want to show you another method as well so that you can figure out which one is the most useful for you. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's use the cluster bit. So we need to get rid of these joints since they're getting in the way, and I want to see them right now. Joints are gone, and we also, I don't know, this mesh is kind of pointless too, so open up our channel box here and just get rid of that. Now we have a nice and clean curve, and we can actually work with it. Let's take a look at one of the points. Now, a cluster can work with just one point, completely fine. If you decide to go that route, obviously you can just go ahead and create a cluster. And then again, the handle of this cluster, this C here, is going to be your main control point. Unfortunately, I have a hard time grabbing the damn thing. So what I'm going to do is move it up. Open the outliner, grab the cluster handle. As you can see, the cluster handle performs as expected. However, it's very difficult to grab. So I'm going to go into the attribute editor and go into the cluster hand shape, I believe it was. There's the origin point. So we need to go up in Z, and let's say 4 will be fine. Well, this is a little bit too much. 2? Yeah, 2. So there's our cluster handle here. However, that is just the graphic, not the actual handle. Handle itself is still exactly on the point. So we do need to create a controller for this. Now, ideally, you don't need to do this for a cluster because this isn't a cluster. This is just, what I've just done is kind of waste, right? You don't want to do this. But if you have 2 points in this, like in this situation, the cluster origin would be in the middle. And this will allow you to hook up different controllers to it, all right? So in my case, I'm just gonna Control Z out of this because I don't need this one point to be hooked up. There we go, cluster is gone. One more cluster. What I'm gonna do after this video, essentially, or like until next time, is I'm going to grab both of these and I'm going to create a cluster here, move it up and down, see if it works. And I'm going to grab the other bits as well, this bit here and this bit here. And I'm going to create another cluster here. And I'm going to do this for every point. So at the end of the day, I'll have 4 clusters. And then I'll see how I'm going to rig them together and decide what to do. Now, in your situation, you probably won't need clusters. So I'm going to show you how to use the shapes as controllers. Okay. In other words, let's say I'm done with my points here. Okay, and I have 4 clusters. However, I still have the middle joint. If we go ahead and show the joint, I still have this middle joint that needs to be controlled by something other than the joint itself. In other words, I need to be able to grab it. So if I can go ahead and just hide this for one more second, show joints. There we go. And probably IK handles, I don't need that either, but whatever. Keep them there for vanity's sake. I can go ahead and just pop this close. Go ahead and create a NURBS primitive, which would be a square, let's say. Now here's the square, and it's basically a shape, right? So what I'm going to do is go into vertex mode, grab these bits here, and scale them up. No, down. And something like, I don't know, something cool. Maybe something like this. This looks pretty good to me. Has some nice effect to it. Okay, now I have this done, and you might say, well, this is amazing, nice and very nice and cool, but if you take a look at it, once I click on a particular bit here, it just creates this, like, it's not a full shape, which is very annoying, right? I mean, I can click on all of them, but, you know, this is not a full shape. I could move this by mistake, and, you know, it's annoying. So what you need to do in this situation is, unfortunately, like, I don't know for what reason Maya doesn't want to make a full, like a regular square 1 bit. You'll notice that the square is actually a group of all of these shapes right here, all of them, which is you know, I don't know, some kind of containers. I don't know why exactly it's like that, but it doesn't really matter. I don't care. What you need to do is go ahead and show the shapes, and you will notice, I'm just going to collapse this and expand it with Shift. You'll notice that every shape is actually a group within a group. So this is part of this group, which is part of that group. It's really, I don't know why, okay? Don't know why. Just don't ask me. It's backwards, but that's the way it is. Now, what we need to do is essentially turn these all into one shape. Now notice that this is a group, okay? And this is also a group. So if we want to parent these together, we need to create a group. I'm going to press Ctrl G, and the group is created. And now I will go ahead and select all of these with Control. Hold down Control and just select all of these, and then select the group that you want to go ahead and put in. And for this, we're going to need, unfortunately, the command line, because for some reason this is quite annoying. So write down parent, and you need some modifiers, which would be -R and -S. This will do just this, and it will turn it into one shape. Now we can delete all this garbage, and we've got our one shape. Obviously, get rid of the show shapes, and as you can see, now we have one full shape available to us here, and whenever I click on it, you know, it's final. Now, obviously, you can have anything you want as a controller, because this is, remember, we're going to be clicking on this. So if you decide to, I don't know, let's say Control D to duplicate and just, you know, rotate it a little bit, I don't know, like 45 degrees. I don't even know if this is 45. And then Shift D again and Shift D again, and you're going to have something like this. Like, I don't even know what I've done right now, but you definitely can go a little bit nuts when it comes to controllers. All right. I'm going to stick to mine, which is very simple because, like I said, it's a 2D thing. So let's just go ahead and rotate this at 90 degrees. And because we duplicated it, we'll delete the old one, open the outliner, and call this controller. Now what we're going to do, at least in my situation, what I'm going to do is just going to lift this up. well, I probably should actually flip it 90 degrees so that I have a little bit better control. As you can see, it is right above where our root, well, my root, would be. So let's go ahead and take a look at where the root is compared to the thing. There's the joint. I'm going to grab my object here. I'm going to hold V, which will allow me to snap to vertices. I'm going to snap it to the joint. Okay, this is exactly on the joint right now. There's no moving around. This is the root joint. Next, what I'm going to do is move this sucker out in the z-axis. So something of this sort. Somewhere, I don't know, here, I suppose. Here is nice. That's not bad, yeah. So there's my whole setup here. And I'm done. Am I? Am I? Take a look here at the channel box. No, I'm not. Why is that? Well, that is because if I want this to be the default position for this object, right? Because remember, whenever I grab my, I want to make it so that whenever I grab this object and manipulate this object, I actually manipulate this object. Remember with the constraints, whenever you constrain something, you want to have it zeroed out, which means that once I'm done, remember, this is minus 3.272 right now, right? If I move it around, let's say I do some manipulations and it ends up somewhere here. How am I going to put it back? Are you going to remember 3.7272? No, you're not going to do that. So what you want to do is zero it out, because after that you can just type in 0. It's going to go back in its place. Now obviously I have a shortcut for this, but let's go ahead the long route and go to modify and freeze transformations, which will essentially allow you to zero everything out. You can even go ahead and look at what we're freezing, and we're freezing everything. Freeze the transform, and we're zeroed out. Now anytime I move this anywhere I want, come on then, dude. Anywhere I want, I can just type in 0 and it will be zeroed out. Same goes for rotations, by the way. If you have it rotated in a particular way, notice that I had a minus 90 rotation. It's now 0. So this is also one more handy thing to know. Once you're done, there's your question now. How are you going to parent this? How are you going to constrain this? Now you got two options, right? Obviously the first one is to select the child and then select the parent and press P. And now every time you move this, so will the rest of this stuff. Obviously not ideal, because usually in these situations you're better off constraining, because like I said, constraint is a set of rules. Okay, so if you go ahead and select this and move that and press P for parent. Oh, they're already parented. Okay, so as you can see, I can move this up and down, but because they're parented regularly, I can also move this bit. So what's the point of this controller then if I can move the other side as well? So I'm gonna unparent everything. How am I? All right, it's already unparented. My bad. Let me just see what's the story. What have I done now here? Controller. Central. No. Just Control Z out of this thing. Come on. There we go. Now usually Shift P unparents it, but I had to select this bit as to unparent it. I don't know why I thought Control Z would be a faster route anyway. So now I'm going to select the master and then the slave, which is this. After I do that, I'm going to go into constraints. I'm going to select parent. Now, obviously, you might want to open up the window here just to see what the hell you're doing. Just reset the settings. Oh, they're reset. You just want to be sure that what you're doing is correct. So you'll be parenting the rotates. Are you going to be parenting the translates? Now, in our situation, we're not going to be parenting the rotates because there are no rotates. Or we could not parent just the Z and the Y axis. We could have it on a separate object. But because this is a 2D game, we only need the Z and the Y. We don't need the X. It's not going to be going left and right. However, it's up to you to choose, all right? You can parent it here and eliminate one axis, or you can limit its movement here in the attribute editor afterwards, or you can lock and hide it. Like there's so many things you can do to eliminate movement, but I'm going to parent this regularly, okay? As you can see, we have a parent constraint now over here in the shapes, which is our output and should be going into the input of this thing. There we go, parent constraints, shapes. And this is the output. There we go. Now you can see that the color changed because now anything I do is only going to be done through here. I cannot do, look at the color of these values here. It means that I cannot control it, right? Here it is. I'm trying to move it. I'm moving it, am I? And then I grab this and it snaps back. Because you cannot break the rules, right? This is a master-slave relationship again. So this is all there is to it, right? I move this bit around, and then whatever I do, I decide to zero it out, and I'm done. And that's exactly the reason why you want to have controls. Afterwards, you can duplicate this bit, or you can duplicate special. I think you could, well, this would be really bad if you duplicated the special, because this would not transfer all of its dependencies. In other words, it would not be a second parent to this object, right? So there's that, guys. You basically choose how you want to run this, because at the end of the day, this is a personal thing. How you decide to run your, how you decide to run your setup here. Obviously, if you wanted to get rid of X, the rotate and the X translate, you could just lock them. You can lock the selected. I don't like hiding things. I prefer them just so that I can see what the hell am I doing. Obviously, I can't move left and right, but at least they're locked. And this means that, I can't make a mistake, but I know they're there. It doesn't mean that even if you lock them, you cannot hide them. I mean, even if you hide them, you can't unhide them. But it is an extra step, and it usually is done when you're working within a team and you are the technical artist or the rigging artist, or I don't know the proper term. But if you have a friend of yours that is just doing the animations and you need to rig it for him, then if you want to tell him, dude, listen, you're not going to be moving it left and right, okay, in any situation, because this is a 2D game. I'm going to lock this and hide it, and you're done, right? You're not going to be making a mistake, especially once you start, editing values here, especially once you have a bunch of these custom attributes or something, whether you've created them or not, right? So that's that. And I'll see you guys basically next time when I have this rigged out on my own. You do that as well at home. So this is going to be a short overview of what I've done after that, and just to test a couple of things before we can run over and talk about animation. And in fact, we'll probably use the asset here for just to show you how different animations will work, because frankly, we don't really need to animate quite a lot. In your situation, depending on what you've chosen to work on, you may need to create more animations or less animations. So at the end of the day, it's a very, all per case basis, I'd say, thing. So yeah, there's that. I think I've showed you everything that you need to know about rigging. If you miss anything about the tools available to you, obviously go back to the video that explains to you the rigging toolkit. Obviously try to use the bonus tools whenever you can. They usually save you a lot of time. Take a look around, see what happens. Let's say you're rigging and you want to do something that is not available within the menu. Just take a look here first and look what's available. You can rename the new joints, bones on curve. Well, that's nice. You can put bones on a curve here. I didn't even know that's possible. Stretchy IK, which is a solver which allows you to stretch everything. Then obviously there's other solvers such as multi-chain solvers, etc. You can just take a look at them if you wanted to do something really fancy, like, I don't know, like an octopus. For example, a multi-chain solver is very helpful for that, because an octopus, it has a very complicated tentacle thing, and animating it with just a spline curve might be a little bit too annoying. So you could use an IK handle and, with a multi-chain solver in order to have it work. But you need to enable it obviously from the command line here, which actually, to be fair, you probably should keep this available at all times. I don't even know why I deleted it. I think I deleted it just to have more screen space, but now it actually comes into play, so I enabled it anyway. And that's it. Obviously you can set up an arm and control and foot and all that, but that bit is for the human IK, and you don't have any feet or arms here. So there's that. I'll see you next time, guys. Play around with your models, see what you can do. Try to get it functional, right? Try to get it functional. Whenever you finish with your controllers, move them around, see where you can, if you're missing something. If you got full control, then you're doing good. If you don't have any control, then you're fucking it up, and you got to make sure that you can control everything. Every aspect that you need to control must be controllable without you selecting the object, the joint chain. You must not, under any circumstances, try not to select the joint chain. You always want to work on external objects. You don't want to be working on the joint chain itself. All right. So there's that. I'll see you next time, guys. Bye bye.